Hey folks, Russ Bailey here. Welcome to another edition of BrushPile Fishing the Podcast. We're coming to you live again from the waters of Blue Marsh Lake in eastern Pennsylvania, and I mean eastern Pennsylvania. We've got a great guest in store today. We actually taped a show with him yesterday, Mitch Metcalf. Mitch, how we doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Hey Mitch, I'll tell you what, we're going to break for a second. When we come back, you want to tell the folks a little bit about this lake?
Absolutely, I would love to.
All right, stay tuned folks, we'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back. As I said in the opening, we are at Blue Marsh Lake in eastern Pennsylvania. And Mitch, you and I had talked before the show, and I was honest with you, I had never heard of Blue Marsh Lake. You don't, at least on social media, you don't see a lot of things about people crappie fishing in eastern Pennsylvania, to be honest with you.
Absolutely not. No, it's funny with the amount of attention and interest in it, you just don't see a lot of people doing it around here, which is weird because we definitely have a healthy population of crappie. And a lot of lakes around here do too. Not just this one, but this one definitely is special.
Well, and you know, yesterday I got to witness that, and I'll give you a little background on yesterday's show. We got here and Mitch told us they actually drew the lake down about a foot in the last 24 hours. And a lot of places that we've taped, when that happens, man, it can make it tough on the fishing. And we tried several spots. What did we start out on, those cubes?
Yeah, so we started out on some fish crates, is what they call them, and it's just man-made, almost pallets stacked on top of each other. Just some artificial habitat for anything offshore for them to live in. This was a man-made reservoir, so there really isn't a lot of offshore structure or cover for these fish. Other than that at this point. So other than maybe a tree or two, those are just the perfect thing to put out there.
And we're in the middle of September. When you're crappie fishing this time of year, what depth do you look for? What do you look for to fish?
Okay. So while I'm fishing for crappie, I'm mostly looking for, deep current, something with some trees that stick out over it. It's going to position those fish in hopefully more of a feeding type of mode while they're actually hanging out in that current zone. So I'm actually going to try to fish about 12 to 20 foot, something that gets me away from the fish a little bit further. I don't want to be right on top of them usually.
And yesterday we fished some laydowns, is where we had our most success, and they were in deeper water. And these are big laydowns, folks. I mean, huge trees. And yesterday, those fish were about as tight to those trees as they could get.
Absolutely, and that is part of the conditions of the day. You sort of have to figure those little things out, chip away at those details. If you have to put your jig right on top of that tree trunk, you may have to do that. They may not come flying out of the tree for it, even if there's 150 in there.
Which we saw. Yeah. The other thing, folks, so I love using plastics, and I tried every style of crappie magnet I had in the box. You would get a little tick, but they absolutely would not take that. You were using the Popeye jig, and when I say small, it's a small hair jig made by Crappie Magnet. You started popping a couple, and I stayed stubborn for a little bit, and could not get one on plastic. As soon as I made that change to the Popeye, it made all the difference. And folks, we're talking, like Mitch said, anywhere from 15 to 20 foot of water, with a small 1/16, and I mean small hair jig. If you've never seen a Popeye jig, we'll probably have one on display here for you. But if I've ever seen a bait make all the difference in the world, it did yesterday.
Something about that. Actually, Corey Thomas always speaks very highly of that as well on Dale Hollow. And this fish is very similarly, I think, and the fish are just as pressured, but man, they really like that small presentation for some reason.
They did yesterday.
They really do. So something I rely on pretty much every day if I'm looking for crappie, that's for sure.
Now, we caught all black crappie yesterday. Is there a population of white crappie here?
There is a population of white crappie. It seems like in my experience, a lot of those are isolated fish, sort of out in the open here.
Okay.
They like to chase bait around, and unless you're really focused on using pen optics, maybe not the best thing to go after this time of year.
Right.
In the fall, now they'll set up on top of brush piles and those fish crates that we talked about earlier. But oftentimes it's one good one, and he's just sitting there ready to go. Yeah.
Well, now yesterday, the other thing is, you said that this is a drawdown lake, so when will they start drawing out for winter pool?
Usually about mid-October they'll start bringing it down. They only drop it 5 feet, and they keep it very consistent throughout the entire winter.
Does that push those fish where you know?
It definitely concentrates fish.
Yeah.
So if there is a tree along the shoreline, they're all going to be out in the branches of it. They're not going to be up on the bank at all. They're going to be way down out away from the bank for sure.
And also, I'm going to throw this in here, but I don't want you guys to hold it against me, but you're mainly a bass guide.
For sure.
So you do offer the bass guide service, and there's largemouth and smallies in here.
Yep, definitely.
We actually caught both yesterday when
did.
we was crappie fishing.
That's right.
So if someone wanted to reach you and book a trip, what's the easiest way?
So they can reach out by phone, 267-221-7162. They can reach out via my email, duenorthguide@gmail.com. They can also reach me on Facebook, Instagram, or any of the other social media platforms. We pretty much have everything going.
Still have some good fishing left in the fall.
That's right. Oh, yes. And all winter, too, actually. I found that a lot of the bigger crappie, I'm catching them in the dead of winter. There's something about it.
You know, the fish we caught yesterday, they were, and like I say, we're in the second week of September. They were big fish. They were thick fish. I cannot imagine what they're going to look like during a spawn or when they're fattening up for winter, because that's the other thing. Talk about the bait fish you have here.
We have an absolute abundance of alewife shad in this lake, and it is pretty amazing how many there can be in one area. And if they got all that sitting over top of their head, it can be a little tricky to get them to bite, but they do eventually.
We had to work.
We had to work for them, but you know, if you give them something maybe a little smaller than their normal food, they may just take a little snack bite out of it, and that'd be enough to get them in the boat for sure.
It worked yesterday.
It did
man.
work yesterday. Yeah.
So folks, if you're interested in a trip here, if you live anywhere close to this, within a couple hours, and you've never fished it or you haven't fished it in a while, you owe it to yourself to get down here, because like I say, the crappie that we caught yesterday that you'll see on the show, they were incredibly, very, very healthy fish, big fish. I think the one was pushing right at 2 pounds.
Absolutely.
A lot of pound, a quarter, pound and a half yesterday. So if you live anywhere close, you're thinking about a lake to try, get down here to Blue Marsh Lake. The other thing is it's absolutely beautiful here in this area. So Mitch, appreciate you joining us, man.
Very nice to have you.
Thank you, buddy. Well, folks, that's all for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned. We'll be back again with BrushPile Fishing, the podcast.